Good morning. Today is April 25th, 2025, and this is a meeting of the Legislative Audit Commission. Online, we have Senator Barr and Senator Zhang and members here. Maybe we can start with taking the roll.
Representative Anderson.
Here.
Senator Barr.
Here.
Senator Dibble. Senator Dibble. Senator Drazkowski. Senator Drazkowski. Representative Greenman. Representative Greenman. Representative Hansen.
Here.
Representative Jacob.
Here.
Senator Curran. Senator Curran. Representative Lee. Representative Lee. Representative Quam. Senator Rest. Senator Rest. Senator Zhang.
Here.
That completes the roll. We have 6 members present.
Maybe I can ask the deputy auditor, are we able to, we do not have a quorum? Or we do have a quorum?
We do not have a quorum at this time.
Okay. Are we able to start the presentation anyway? City one?
Thank you, Representative
Okay.
Anderson. Because we're not asking for any action to be taken, yes, we can proceed without a quorum.
Okay. Deputy Auditor Rodriguez.
Great, thank you
Thanks.
very much. For the record, my name is Jody Munson Rodriguez. I'm the Deputy Legislative Auditor for OLA's Program Evaluation Division. Before we start talking about our release of the DNR land acquisition report, I did just want to do a tiny bit of housekeeping. Let you all know that it has been extremely difficult to find a time when we can achieve a quorum of the LAC in order to finish up our program evaluation topic selection process. Unfortunately, I do want to be transparent. That is going to have an effect on when we're able to release our next round of evaluations. We're starting probably at least a month later than we typically do. And so I just want to be upfront about how that will affect our timelines looking forward. I'm really hopeful that this new topic selection process that you all have voted on will help us alleviate some of these timing pressures in the future, but we're just rolling with what we have right now. I am trying to get together. It looks like we may be able to have at least a subcommittee meeting on Monday morning if we can ensure that at least one member will be able to be present in the room. So I'm kind of working all the angles on that. So hopefully more to come on that. And then we'll just have to get the Legislative Audit Commission together after that when we can. Are there any questions on that before we move on to the report?
Any questions from members? No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we can go ahead and move on to our release of the DNR land acquisition report. Thank you for having us here to talk about our work today.
Can I interrupt quick?
Absolutely.
Senator Drazkowski is here, so we have a quorum now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as many of you are aware, camping, fishing, and other outdoor activities are important to Minnesota's economy, and it's also a big part of why many of us love living in this state. Minnesotans have voted several times to dedicate tax funds to the protection and conservation of the state's land and other natural resources. And the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, is tasked with acquiring land for these purposes. Our principal question in this evaluation was how well has DNR conducted its land acquisition process? And as Ms. De La Cueva, the evaluations manager, will go into detail on, the department has done well in many aspects. However, there are a few places, such as timeliness and reporting, where we identified some areas for improvement. So to provide you with some more details on this, I'll turn it over to Ms. De La Cueva.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. And for the record, my name is Sarah De La Cueva, and I work with the Office of the Legislative Auditor. And am I supposed to press that button? There is a button on my screen that I would like IT's support on before I move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, I will go ahead and share my presentation and begin. All right, thank you. So I'm happy to be with you this morning to tell you all about our evaluation of DNR's land acquisition processes. But before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the other members of my evaluation team. Sitting behind me are Will Harrison and Roman Morris, and I thank them for all of their hard work on this evaluation. I'll start by giving you a preview of our key findings, which, as the deputy auditor said, were pretty positive. DNR generally complied with statutory requirements for the land acquisition process. However, DNR did not fully comply with two requirements for reporting that are established in statute. Stakeholders of the process in our surveys revealed that generally they think DNR does a good job selecting land to acquire, but that the process takes entirely too long. Before I dive into those findings, I will set the stage by giving a little bit of information about the state land and land acquisition. The state of Minnesota has 51 million acres of land within its borders. As you can see here, the state government owns about 11% of this land. Nearly 3/4 is owned by private individuals and other private entities, and the remainder of the land is owned by county, federal, and tribal governments. Of the land that the state does own, DNR manages nearly all of it.
Thank you. Let the record note Senator Coran has joined us. Now we really have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll tell you now a bit of the basics of land acquisition. DNR acquires land for three main purposes: to conserve natural resources, to provide recreation such as camping, fishing, hiking, skiing, lots of other opportunities for Minnesotans across the state, and to provide sustainable economic use of natural resources, including the timber harvesting industry. Land that DNR acquires becomes part of the state's outdoor recreation system. Most of it does. And this system has a number of units in it. And you might know of those as the wildlife management units, state forests, that sort of, and state park recreation areas. Those all become part of the state's recreation system. And that is what DNR is typically acquiring. In order to select land, DNR has created 6 goals called Strategic Land Asset Management, or SLAM goals, and they align with the purposes that I listed a moment ago. I'm not going to go deeply into project selection right now, but there's a lot more to learn on chapter 3 of our report if you are interested. Land acquisition involves many participants. Obviously, DNR. DNR has staff from local, regional, and central offices representing several divisions who are involved in the land acquisition process. The Lands and Minerals Division is the division that handles the bulk of the real estate processes. And the land acquiring divisions are those 4 divisions that will be managing the land once we have acquired it from their landowners. And Fish and Wildlife, Forestry, Parks and Trails, and the Ecological and Water Resources Division are those divisions that acquire land. Partner organizations come up pretty frequently in our report. Excuse me. These are often nonprofits, conservation organizations, or other non-state entities such as Ducks Unlimited or the Trust for Public Land. And these organizations are named in appropriation law as the recipients of outdoor heritage funding, and for the purpose of acquiring land and then conveying it to DNR. Of course, to acquire land, there needs to be a landowner who is willing to sell their land to the state or donate. And finally, while the involvement is limited, DNR notifies local and tribal governments of land acquisitions before they take place within their borders. And as I will explain shortly, DNR also must obtain county board approval for certain acquisitions.
Thank you. Can I interrupt?
You may.
We're going to welcome Senator Green. Would you like to join us at the table? Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm about to move into our findings and recommendations, but before I do, I just wanted to explain a bit about the scope of our evaluation. We focused on fee title acquisitions. This is what you think of generally as owning the land, as opposed to conservation easements. This is owning the land with all of the rights included. While there are some lesser used acquisition methods, we mainly focused on purchases from DNR's purchases from landowners, donation directly from landowners, and conveyance from partner organizations. Purchases and donations are known as DNR-led acquisitions, and conveyances are known as partner-led acquisitions. And from the fiscal years 2020 to 2024, DNR closed on 234 total acquisitions. 110 of those were DNR-led, and 124 of those were partner-led. So let's get into the findings. Our evaluation questions included the extent to which DNR complied with legal requirements related to acquiring land. Before I tell you what I found, I'd like to point out that the statutes related to the land acquisition process have not been amended in decades. They reflect a time before partner organizations played the large role in the process that they do today. So most of the statutes that we looked at do not explicitly mention partner organizations as they're discussing how land should be acquired. So without explicit requirements for partner organizations in statute, it's up to DNR's discretion whether to hold partner organizations responsible for the same standards that DNR must meet when acquiring land.
Thank you. Let the record note, Representative Lee has joined us. So
Thank you.
crazy time in session. So
Understand. Thank you, Madam Chair. We identified several statutory requirements related to land acquisition process. For today's presentation, I'm just going to hit a couple of examples, but if I would draw your attention to Exhibit 2.1 on page 18 of our report, which has a table that goes through these more fully. So the first is that DNR must ensure that all land that it acquires is appraised. And statutes spell out a number of related recommendations that are related requirements that appraisals themselves must meet. For all land acquisitions, they must be appraised by a certified private appraiser that does not have an interest in the land being acquired. For DNR-led purchases in particular, the statutes also require that the appraiser inspect the land in person and allow the landowner the opportunity to observe that inspection. None of these appraisal-related requirements, however, are explicitly required for partner-led acquisitions, according to statutes. But DNR does use its grant agreements to ensure that partners meet these standards before they distribute funds from the Outdoor Heritage Fund. As a second example, DNR must obtain county board approval for when acquiring certain land to be designated as a scientific and natural area or a wildlife management area, as well as when acquiring land using Reinvest in Minnesota Resources or RIM funding. Partner-led acquisitions, on the other hand, do not have a requirement for county board approval even when acquiring these same types of land. Instead, statutes require partner organizations to notify counties 30 days in advance of closing with the landowner. As we discussed in depth in Chapter 2 of our report, DNR has complied with the statutory requirements related to the land acquisition process. Further, DNR has ensured that partner organizations meet the same standards for partner-led purchases. Given that statutes generally do not reflect partner organizations' involvement in the land acquisition process, we recommend that the legislature consider whether statutes should establish the same requirements for DNR and partner-led acquisitions. Go ahead. Or did you want to? In some cases, such as appraisal requirements, DNR's application of the same standards to all acquisitions is helping to ensure that state money is being used responsibly. Were DNR to change its processes, partner-led acquisitions could become higher risk transactions. With respect to—
let the record show Chair Rest has joined us. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. With respect to county board approval, there are pros and cons to requiring partners to meet the same requirements as DNR. While doing so would certainly treat the acquisition of similar lands more similarly. It would also lengthen the acquisition process when those lands are being acquired by a partner organization. This is not advancing. There we go. All right. In contrast to the procedural requirements we just discussed, DNR has not fully satisfied two reporting requirements related to land acquisition. Statutes require that DNR report on a biennial basis an inventory of DNR managed land, highlighting recent acquisitions since the last report. This requirement has been in law since at least the 1970s, but DNR told us that the department has never submitted such a report to the legislature. Statutes also require DNR to submit a report about the transactions from the land acquisition account, and that is an annual report. DNR last submitted this report for fiscal year 2022, so the past 2 years worth of reports are overdue. Further, the fiscal year 2022 report provided a summary of total expenditures and example transactions, but did not satisfy the requirement to indicate all purchases and sales from the account. Consequently, we recommend that DNR regularly produce these reports in a manner that satisfies their respective requirements in state law. If DNR considers these requirements to be overly burdensome or duplicative, we encourage the department to work with the legislature to suggest appropriate changes. I'm now going to shift gears and talk a little bit about the results of our surveys of land acquisition stakeholders. We surveyed DNR staff with responsibilities related to land acquisition, as well as partner organizations, selected landowners, and county governments. First, we asked survey respondents the extent to which they agreed or disagreed that DNR does a good job selecting land to acquire. As you can see here in the two sets of teal bars, the large percentages of stakeholders in each group who expressed an opinion agreed or strongly agreed that this is true. Actually, I should have not gone forward quite yet. DNR staff in particular shared a lot of comments in response to our open-ended questions supporting the SLAM goals in the land acquisition process. For example, one staff member said, SLAM has made the acquisition process more consistent and ensures the lands DNR is purchasing meet the SLAM goals. It has been great to have conversations about each acquisition between divisions. With respect to the acquisition process itself, we asked survey respondents to indicate the extent to which they agreed or disagreed with a number of statements related to DNR's communication, fairness, and other aspects of the process. In general, DNR and landowners expressed favorable views, while partner organizations had more mixed views. For example, we asked respondents whether overall DNR does a good job acquiring land, and the results demonstrate the pattern that I described. More than 3/4 of DNR staff and 68% of landowners agreed that DNR does a good job acquiring land overall. Partner organizations, however, 50% disagreed with the statement. On our survey, the length of the acquisition process was generally the question with the most negative results. As you can see from this chart, more than half of DNR staff and 70% of partner organizations representatives disagreed, showed with those orange bars, with the statement that land acquisition process concludes within a reasonable time frame. The length of the process was also among the most commonly mentioned themes in the open-ended responses to our survey questions, with DNR staff, partner organizations, and landowners all voicing their concerns. One landowner said, the only major con to the entire process is that it took insanely long to close from the time the offer possibility was made known. It truly should not have taken that long. We analyzed data on DNR's acquisitions that closed from fiscal year 2022 to 2024, and we found that the median length of the acquisitions during that 5-year period was 21 months. So this sounds pretty long, especially if you're thinking in terms of how long it takes to buy a home. But acquiring land for the state is a more complex transaction. As we've mentioned previously, DNR must gain county board approval for certain acquisitions. Statutes give counties 90 days to approve or disapprove of an acquisition. So this adds up to 3 months to the acquisition timeline. DNR also requires, as we know, that all acquisitions be appraised and that they undergo an appraisal review, which involves a second certified appraiser checking the assumptions and the accuracy of the original appraisal report and the valuation contained within. And while all real estate transactions involve title review, as a state agency, DNR is subject to some statutory requirements that make title review more time-consuming and complex. For example, a state agency cannot incur future financial obligations for the state. For example, this means that if a current landowner is part of an agreement that they contribute to on an ongoing basis, such as a shared drain tile system, the DNR cannot purchase the land with that agreement still in place. It's something that must be remedied before DNR closes on the acquisition. So while there are some good reasons that DNR's process takes longer than some other real estate transactions, DNR is well aware that the length of the acquisition process is not ideal. In 2023, DNR participated in a continuous improvement project where this DNR staff met with partner organizations, staff from the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council, which oversees the Outdoor Heritage Fund and a major funding source for partners. And they got together to talk about the partner-led acquisition process and its timeline. They focused on appraisals and the title review process. So this group worked together and identified a lot of pain points and identified 14 proposed solutions to help streamline the process. DNR has worked towards implementing these recommendations. They have already done several of them and are in the process of working on several more. For example, DNR has implemented a system to make it easier for partner organization attorneys to consult with DNR's attorneys. And DNR is working with selected partner organizations to pilot test conducting the title review earlier in the acquisition process, rather than waiting until after the partner organization has already closed with the landowner, which is currently how the system has usually worked. So as I mentioned, the continuous improvement project was focused on partner-led acquisitions. However, some of the solutions would also apply to DNR-led acquisitions, which are similarly lengthy. One example would be developing a resource or staffing plan that addresses capacity for land acquisition project managers and attorneys. So we recommend that DNR adopt and incorporate into the DNR-led acquisition process any of the solutions that prove successful in working with the partners. This concludes my remarks for today. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The House, I understand, is going into session at 10, so we're going to move right to the response. But thank you very much for presenting the report, and I appreciate especially the briefing that you so graciously provided me. And then want to hear from the department, Mr. Meyer, and then we'll take questions from those of us who can remain. Okay. But wanted the department to have a
Good morning, Madam Chair.
presenting before the House as well. Welcome to the commission. If you would identify yourself, please, for the record. We're pleased to hear your response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources. I also have with me Kirsten Larson, who is our project manager working with the OLA on this report. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the OLA for their work on this report and all of the work they do on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota. We value their input and we work with them as a partner and implement recommendations that we can at all times. With that, I'm going to roll right into the findings since we're really short on time. The finding requiring all land DNI acquires must be met the same standards, basically county board approval for non-governmental organizations. We're not going to weigh in on that recommendation at this time, but we will work with the legislature should a bill come forward or working on that issue with the partners to ensure that there's transparency and meeting those requirements. The other report finding that we have not reported on an inventory of DNR managed lands to the legislature as required by law. First of all, I want to thank the auditor for bringing this report up. If you go to the Legislative Reference Library and look up this report, there's actually a note from the department from December 30th of 2000 which reads, "This report has never been prepared as a separate report by this agency. Elements of this report are incorporated in other reports, and we'll be addressing this with the legislature's mandate." As I said, we appreciate that coming forward. We do have language in Senate File 2077, Senator Hur's Omnibus Environment Finance Bill, that would repeal this report, and we look forward to working with the legislature to come up with a reporting mechanism, or how can we provide this information to them as well. In regards to the land acquisition report, we requestfully apologize for not having that report done in time due to some staffing transitions and things like that, but we are working diligently to have that report presented both years to the legislature by October 1st of 2025. Madam Chair, as far as the report identifies the work that we've done on timeliness of partner-led acquisitions, our continuous improvement efforts with partners are very important to us, and continuing to implement those issues and opportunities to streamline acquisitions wherever possible, but also protecting the state's interest and landowners' interests as we acquire land is very important to us as well. Madam Chair, with that, we just, again, thank you for the work for the auditor has done, and thank you for the work of this commission. It is really important to the department to work with you to make our operations more transparent and more effective and efficient.
Ms. Larson, did you want to speak as well?
No, thank you. Madam Chair, members, no, thank you.
Okay. Are there questions or comments for Mr. Meyer, Assistant Commissioner Meyer? Representative Hansen?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Assistant Commissioner Meyer. I have a question relating to the acquisitions, like what happens after, before, during, and after. So if there is a purchase, and I'm assuming now after 20 years of technology that we map that the state has a map and a land description and legal description, and is there any work done, let's say 10, 20 years after, on monitoring or reporting, looking at a site visit or aerial photography or some way of verifying that those boundaries are the same? And my concern is creep either way, you know, that if the public land creeps into the private land or the private land starts creeping into the public land, could you maybe on the acquisition, what efforts are made there to ensure that the boundaries remain accurate and the same?
Mr. Meyer?
Madam Chair, members, I'll take a stab at this, and I may call upon Kirsten to provide more detailed information. We do take that very seriously. We monitor, for example, conservation easements. We monitor them on an annual cycle to make sure that there is no creep. People aren't building buildings and things like that. Our land managers, people on the ground working on these units every day, are working to improve these lands, to monitor them, and they also are watching the boundaries as well. For our wildlife management system, we have 1,800 units that have over 1 million acres of land there. We have a condition use report on our website that users, people out walking their dogs or hunting, can identify things and put it right on the website. Goes to the local area manager. And we also have GIS tools where you can look at the boundaries of many of our parcels, if not all of them, depending on where we go, that you can identify and look at boundaries and things like that. We do take that very seriously. When we do have a trespass issue, we look to resolve those. Sometimes it's working with the legislature to rectify that issue, selling a piece of land or exchanging a piece of land with local landowners. But the question that I have is very important, and we take those duties really important to do as what we can for it.
Okay. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, and Ms. Larson. I struggle with the notion that we have a report that's been required in law for 55 years and the agency hasn't done it once. So, Mr. Meyer, Ms. Larson, did the DNR, were you aware of the fact that this report was required but not completed prior to the legislative auditor doing their work, or did it take their work in order to discover it?
Mr. Meyer?
Madam Chair, Senator Drazkowski, that's a great question. In my entire career at the department, which has been a long career, I was not aware of this report. So identifying it, had we known of this report, had I known of it back when we did the unsession with Governor Dayton, this would have been on our list to repeal that, since we do have long-range plans that govern the use of the public properties that are listed. If you look at the statutory language, to include an inventory of tracts and parcels of land and rights, interest, and easement therein, held by the state or withdrawn from sale for any of these purposes, with the value thereof, a list of the name, location, size, description of each state's trail, state scientific and natural area, state wildlife management area, state water access site, and it goes on and on. This information is readily available in our database that we share with Department of Revenue for PIL purposes and other land ownership needs. And again, we have master plans for many of these larger units and long-range plans. So we feel we are meeting these requirements. And to your question, had this been brought to my attention sooner, I would have worked with the legislature to address it back in the day. So again, we appreciate the auditor identifying this issue, and the short answer is no, I was not aware of it.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. So what is, I mean, I've heard that the department wants to repeal it. I know Senator Green and myself, as Mr. Meyer, as you know, have been trying to track some of this stuff in the legislature on our own for years. And I don't do a very good job at it. I had a spreadsheet I managed of purchases. And I think Minnesotans want to know, Senator Green certainly I know does. What is your answer then to this? Is it simply to repeal it? Or do you actually have a proposal for a better plan? I mean, as a legislator, I would like to see what the report, if we would have known it and if it would have been done in each of the last 55 years. I think it's important for Minnesotans to know what the trend is in those different areas and who's paying for new land, the different types of land categories, et cetera. I think, I mean, this is nearly 30% government-owned land in the state of Minnesota. I think we owe it to Minnesotans to explain to them what their government is doing in acquiring this land and managing it. But what is the department's, what is your proposal in absence of this report?
Mr. Meyer.
Madam Chair, Senator Drazkowski, as you know, when we presented our bill, our policy bill in committee, I stated that we want to work with the legislature to identify what these reporting requirements should look like. I would suggest that we examine the land acquisition report requirements and perhaps look at that. That is only focused on the land acquisition account, which is money that the department puts into that account when they sell a unit of land, such as if we were to sell a piece of state forest property, that would go back into the land acquisition account to be used to acquire more state forest land. So we could look at the requirements in that report and perhaps do something on a biennial basis that would be much more condensed based upon acquisitions of that year, or look at spending within the Outdoor Heritage Fund bill, where most of the funding comes from for acquisition at this time, and how do we solidify some of the reporting requirements there. Streamlining it, making sure that we provide the information to the legislature, but not placing such an administrative burden on the department that the fiscal cost of preparing a report are greater than the information that's contained within it.
So, Madam Chair, quickly.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Meyer, I mean, in today's technology, it seems like, I mean, the interface of databases and maps and their ability to produce tables, and it seems that this could be done and managed electronically in a way that would be helpful to the people in Minnesota. That could be an ongoing report or something. I don't know, but I'd be interested in part of that discussion as you go forward, and I know others would as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's shocking that, you know, decade after decade of the decade, the DNR hasn't been doing what it's been required to do, and is complaining that, oh, it'll cost too much to actually do what is in our job. And if you'd been doing it all along, it would be more of an update. You'd have everything in place, but having to sift through multiple databases, multiple reports in order to get and compile a list of things that the legislature before any of us were in the legislature, required, and ignoring the responsibility to do the work. It just mind-boggling. The DNR does not get to decide what they're supposed to do, what they do of the required duties and activities to do. And in the excuses, well, about a decade ago, I had a bill for MnDOT to survey the land, determine sellability and all that to save millions and millions of lawsuit legal dollars. And during committee, they said, we really don't know all the land we've got. And I'm getting the impression that that might be part of the problem. You're in a game of where you're acquiring and acquiring and acquiring, and you're managing some of it is partner acquires. But the base responsibility of knowing actually what you've got and having it so that we can analyze, because maybe some of the acquisitions that are being done wouldn't need to be done because you've already got lands that could be utilized for those types of activities. We don't know, because for longer than many of our members have been alive, the DNR has been negligent in actually doing its duty. So the response I'm hearing is, well, if we'd known about it, I would have requested that we have the governor stop requiring this of us. No. The first thing is, the response is, we're sorry, and we're already working on a plan to implement and actually do what you're supposed to do. So have you started? Do you have a complete plan? How are you in the process of actually progressing to do what you're supposed to do?
Mr. Meyer?
Madam Chair, Representative Quam. First of all, I'd like to refer to our letter within the report. I'm sorry, I rushed through some of my comments because I was under the impression that we had a limited time. On our response, the DNR agrees with the information on the inventory of DNR managed land should be easily accessible, and we believe we accomplished that goal. However, DNR recognizes that we have not produced a specific report required by law. We recognize that openly, honestly. We accept the failure. We want to work forward to working on things. We have a detailed database, as I talked about, for the PILT purposes that outlines all of these different types of units of the Outdoor Recreation Act, acre by acre. We could provide legal descriptions to the legislature on each acquisition we have. I do not know what value that would provide. It would be very costly to do. It would be reams and reams of data. But we have that available to share with the legislature. And my comments, Representative Kwan, were not meant to be short or disrespectful in any way. My goal is to improve the work the department does, increase transparency, and work with the legislature on all things that we do, and for the citizens of the state of Minnesota. If you look at our mission statement, it is we work with Minnesotans to protect our natural resources, basically, is shortened it up. So I apologize if I upset you by my comments. We want to work on streamlining this, do it the most effective, efficient, and cost-effective way possible.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm hearing is it's already out there. You guys can just find it. So it's implying that for us, snap our fingers and we've got it. But when we say, well, why don't you actually do what you're supposed to do? Oh no, that is so complex and expensive and difficult that we want to have that requirement taken away. Those two things cannot be true at the same time. And it's obvious to, I hope, a lot of us that they aren't both true at the same time. So it's disappointing to hear the same, oh, where's that page? Yeah, and reading the same talking points when we're just trying to find out the truth. If it is already all there and easy for us to get, then snap your fingers and do it. If it's complex oh, it's just horrible job for us to do. We're not even sure exactly when and how we're going to do that. And that's why we want to take away that requirement. That's disingenuous. And frankly, disappointing. Here, when we see audits and we find out this data's there, this is not, it is really rare that we come up with something that hasn't been done for decades and decades when it's been required. And that's probably part of the reason why I'm a little bit worked up, because we're moving into difficult budget and future budget issues. And we've got to prioritize and et cetera. And for that, we need the data, the information, and to understand, to be able to allocate and do the best job for our citizens. And we can't do that when entities don't actually do the required reports. So forgive me, Madam Chair, it's just disappointing.
Thank you, Representative Quam. Anyone else? Senator Coran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And is it on? Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Assistant Commissioner Meyer, on the response, I think you've described, and there's some gray areas in legislation, right? There's certainly some clarity that could be provided over the last couple decades. Representative Quam mentioned that it's been a requirement. I think for us as it would be great, and I think we should actually have the historical perspective of the state agencies acquiring land. I represent an area just outside the metro area, and it would be wonderful to understand, which I've got one county, which 30% of the land is already state-owned. I can only assume, maybe an uninformed assumption, but that the metro has a high desire for accessibility to sporting and hunting lands that are in close proximity to the cities. I don't know that. How would I be able to understand, make decisions without having that historical information to see where the priorities are for land acquisition? Because I think it's important. So just to remove the requirement, I don't think is sufficient. I'm sure we'll have clarifying bills coming forward that we should have that entire history, a 50-year history. What is it? How, why, and where? And in the other part, you mentioned in your conversation or in your statement was that we have a plan, we have an acquisition plan or whatever those are. What statute directed that acquisition plan that the DNR that you described in the creation outside of a variety of funding mechanisms that have been create these as allowable uses of state dollars to acquire land? What legislative directive set the plan in which you described that you have to do the land acquisition from the DNR?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Meyer.
Madam Chair, Senator Coran, thank you for that question. That's a great question. There are many different sections of statute that require different plans for different types of land. We can provide a list to the committee if you so desire. For example, every state park is required to have a master plan that dictates its use, the purposes, the future uses of it. We have a citizen advisory committee plan on WMA acquisition, wildlife management area acquisition. We have a citizen advisory plan on aquatic management area acquisition. We have a citizen advisory plan on many of our units. Many of our state forests are required to have management plans as well. Our large units of the Outdoor Recreation Act, WMAs, for example, we're just, right now we have the master plan on public comment for the Roseau Wildlife Management Area. So we've completed, that's the last one of those 8 major units that we've done in the past 2 years. So there are a number of different statutes, and I think that was part of the point here. This statute was first put in 1977. Last time it was amended was in 1986 in Chapter 444. Since then, to Senator Zukowski's point, technology has changed drastically. Back in 1986, we were typing reports with typewriters. You had to come to the legislature to get a copy of a bill. You had to come to the legislature to get a copy of bill introductions. It's changed dramatically. So we can provide that list. And, you know, as far as the land acquisition goes within the state of Minnesota, it is citizen driven. We are not out there driving around looking to buy land. Representative Jacobs carrying the DNR lands bill this year, that some private landowners actually approached us to give us their land. It's in Representative Jacobs' district. Those are the types of things we work on. It's not the DNR say, we want more land. It's the citizens of the state of Minnesota who want more land to recreate, to forage. We have a foraging task force in the bill this year. It's going to cost several $100,000, but we're going to work with that to do those types of things, right? So we want to work, as I said, with Minnesotans to do that. We can provide the list of different plans that are required, and together I would like to work with you and to figure out what should we be reporting and how can we do that most cost-effective, transparently, and most useful for the legislature. The thing that I want to avoid is the department or the state preparing reports that cost money. And I see this not all the time. We prepare a report and it's never presented to the legislature, never hears it. They never look at it. There are a number of reports in statute that we have to submit annually that just sit on the shelf. So it's with that aspect is that we come to how do we provide the information people need, most useful and the most beneficial to people. So I do not mean to be confrontational about this. I apologize that we've never done this before, and we want to do what's right for the citizens in the legislature.
Madam Chair.
Senator Corral.
And thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the thorough response as far as all of the groups, and the plan is diverse and many facets to it. I've less and less faith the longer I'm here about any citizen council, because there are very few citizens outside of activists assigned to any of those, and they typically just are driven by agencies, and thus we come with a predetermined outcome in so many cases. I appreciate it, and I think everything you described those are elements that we need to understand holistically. Outside of that report, the one that's in here though of the land acquisition account, I always struggle. I hate excuses, and for the excuses, this one is required by law and it's fairly modern, and you've done it up until 2022, and you acknowledge, well, there's personnel changes. That means nothing to us. Besides, we just didn't do it because you know the requirements. In this case, you at least know the requirement because it's as recent as 2022, and so you knew the requirement and the responsibility was yours. And to have some personnel change, which you also control, those you don't control, you should have resources and backups within every one of those business units to make sure that it's taken care of. A 6-month delay wouldn't have caused this type of delay of staff leaving, short delays, but 2 years, I would prefer, I don't think your responses were confrontational to me at all. But that response, I don't know who created it, but to me is just disingenuous. To me as a legislator. I also know the reports, my time at Department of Revenue, I ran down and did, if you ever saw Office Space, the TPS report. I did that within the agency at least 6 times, spending, full-time programming resources on a report that no one ever used of the all 12 units that got a copy of the report. So I can appreciate living inside that world. That's within the agency. That's not even legislatively directed, but I'm sure there's just as many legislatively directed tasks that add no value to anybody in the life cycle, besides one person, maybe one time when they had an idea. I don't need a response to it. Then I guess my only other question is, when we look at the land acquisitions, I think there's 110 that were likely sought, right? We got great people that want to preserve the land and for recreation, all those things. But the other ones 124 come from partner organizations. How many of the partner organizations, or what percentage of the partner organizations' acquisitions include private dollars, and what is the percentage of the private dollars versus is it just all state dollars that have been allocated through all these other funding vehicles? Do any of those private partners have any matching requirement, or are they just seeking our money, acting as an agent broker on the outside to facilitate these land acquisitions for their purpose, for their stated purpose, ducks, deer, whatever it is?
Madam
Mr. Meyer.
Chair, Senator Coran, that's a great question. And each acquisition is different, different purposes, different types of land. There are sometimes donations that we get. The private landowners will donate land value through those transactions. And then those dollars are able to be leveraged for additional RIM credits and things like that. We would have to really dive into some information and talk more about what you're looking at, but there's not a requirement, for example, for a non-government organization to receive Outdoor Heritage Fund money and then match it, so to speak. I will say this, our work with our government, non-government organization partners is very much entwined with our SLAM process, looking at our SLAM principles, making sure that what they're going to be acquiring or looking at would fit into the units or the wildlife management area or whatever it's going to be, and that it is worthy of being a state parcel. So we are providing that due diligence. We would have to look on a case-by-case basis on private donations, however.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coran. Senator Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And could someone from the auditor's office come up again? And maybe the DNR could stay there too. I just have a couple questions. Thank you. When you put your report together, did you look into the reports to find out the amount of acres that the state owns, state and federal government own? Or was this just information that was given to you by DNR?
Thank you,
Ms.
Madam
Delacour.
Chair, Representative Green. We did request data from DNR. We analyzed data from DNR's land record system, which is the database that has all of their land holdings data and real estate transaction information in it. And so we did do some work to try to, confirm numbers of acres of various management units across the state that DNR holds and has acquired. Is there something in particular that you're interested in?
Yeah. Yes.
Senator Green.
Madam Chair, yes, there is. The numbers that you have in your report pretty much mirror going from memory, mirror the report from 2011. And so there's not any changes in that. But in 2016 on the DNR's website, there is a public lands ownership in Minnesota teacher's guide, and that I've had for some time. And in 2016, in this report, it says the federal government owns 3.4 million acres, or about 7%, which is up to 9 now. And it said the state government owns about 8.5 million acres, which is 17% of the land area. And so the two reports don't match up. And so I was just wondering, I'm pretty sure the DNR hasn't sold more land than they've bought. And so if in 2016, we had gone from the 2011, which was also 11%, up to 17% in 2016, and now we're back down to 11%. And so I know it's a lot of information, and I don't expect you to have those answers off the top of your head, but it would be something that I'd like to look into and find out what's going on there.
Madam Chair.
Your comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Green. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. If I am familiar with the report that you're referencing, I don't remember its details off the top of my head. And if I had noticed those discrepancies, I would have looked into them. So I apologize for that. And I don't know if DNR would wish to comment, but to my knowledge, DNR certainly does sell and exchange land, but to my knowledge, not more than they typically acquire in a given year. So I don't have an explanation for that, but we'll definitely look into it.
Well, Madam
Senator
Chair,
Green.
then all I will have to say to that is I can certainly give you the access to that report, but you can find it on their website. I just looked it up on the website, but I have it saved on my computer as well. So,
Would you tell me the name of it again?
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Meyer, I didn't want to ask my other question about when the agency when they discovered that they were supposed to do this report. I didn't ask about the land acquisition account report. What is the reason that was delinquent?
Madam
Mr. Meyer.
Chair, Senator Drazkowski, as we've stated in our letter, and I recognize it's a failure upon the department to present the report for the past 2 years. Our response in the letter is due to staff transitions. We've had several retirements and then filling those reports. I recognize, per Senator Cran, it's not the best answer. We recognize it. we can't change the past. We work into the future, and we'll get this report to the legislature as soon as possible.
Madam Chair.
Senator Driscollowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. I do appreciate your response in the report about even doing a better job and updating some of it around that, however. So thank you.
Person Jacob.
Thank you, Chair Est. And I don't know if I have a question in this, but so for myself, my farm, 90% surrounded by DNR property. My township, 60% owned by the DNR. I've sold property to the DNR. I've purchased property from the DNR. I sat on the county where we approved these land sales, really just facilitating willing participation on both ends. And it's important for when you get into a situation where you have boundaries like I do with the DNR, that we're good neighbors to each other. Fact of the matter, and so then I also sat on land records on the county, was responsible for obtaining a different land surveying, where we privatized land surveying, which dealt extensively with state land as well. But in all those different dealings, I've never had anything but genuine, good-willed participation on all fronts. I haven't seen any instances of what I thought was fraud or anyone trying to pull something. There's certainly a concern with the amount of land that the state owns and the amount of potential numbers of dollars that are taken off the tax roll. So there's concerns by the taxpayers there, but I haven't seen any ill intent from the DNR in my dealing over the years. So I would just want to include that with the conversation. I think mostly just comment.
Thank you, Representative Jacobs. I'm sure your comment is welcomed by the DNR this morning. Are there further questions or comments? Senator Driscollowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Meyer, I struggle with the notion that we've got a report that was due for 55 years. The legislative auditor found it, and I understand it was long before you were around or any of us were here. And there's probably a gap in time before that. If what's being proposed in the bill now is simply to repeal it, for the legislature, that's kind of like our placeholder, right? Would it make more sense, rather than putting the repealer in now, to come forward with a proposal, have the new proposal and the repealer go into statute at the same time? As a legislator, I'd feel more comfortable with that, rather than taking the requirement out of law. Have you thought about that, and what's your response?
Mr. Meyer.
Madam Chair, Senator Skowski, thank you for that. As you know from our meeting this morning, there's a lot of policy being discussed and worked on as we speak. We still have hopefully about 4 weeks left, not any longer, to finish up session. And I think this is easily accomplished between now and the time that the Senate, the Environment and Natural Resources Finance Bill would be closed. So we can work on some proposals. I would think that combining the land acquisition report that we're required to present with information on acquisitions for that previous year biennium would meet this requirement in addition to everything else that we have. So we can certainly work with yourself, Senator Green, Senator Coran, Representative Quam, Representative Hansen, whoever would like to work with us to develop that. And we can clean this up yet this year.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Then thank you very much for a very fine report. And thank you, Mr. Meyer, for your response this morning. It's very much appreciated. There being no further business before the commission, we're adjourned.
Thank you.